Hello, hello. You guys hear me okay? Just had to go grab a drink, but I am good to go now. I think we are about ready to start. Let me move my, Hello, I don't know what to do. How are you doing today? Let me position myself so I do not hit my camera. We will be zooming in up close today, so I gotta make sure that it's all good. You're doing well. Oh, it is Brim. See, it's always hard to tell when people have different Twitch usernames versus, like, anything else that I know people on Discord. I'm pretty sure there's like a couple of you guys that you just have different Twitch names, and yeah, I'm probably interacting with you all the time on Discord, but I have no idea to match your Twitch handle. Let me switch over and make sure that this camera looks good. We'll be zoomed in on my desk on the right. There we go. Yeah, that's the problem I have too. I try to keep it my name consistent for like almost every server, but it's still really difficult if people have different ones. Alright, so I think there's enough of you guys hanging out to get started. So welcome to another week of my streams. This time we are pretty good to continue on our stuff. We made really good progress on this kit so far, and at this point we're all done with airbrushing. So besides me adding like glossy top coats to pieces, which you guys won't need to see, we'll just be spending majority of the time here on this side of the bench, working on, detail work and fixing things up and painting eyes and that kind of stuff. So I'm probably just gonna jump right into it today. On last Wednesday, we pretty much finished up painting, I believe we painted these shoes at the time, so she had some glossy shoes, or maybe I figured out they had issues. I don't quite remember what we did on Wednesday, but today we're going to be needing to do a lot of cleanup work. We also worked on like painting this portion, so we didn't get as far as cleaning up the enamel on this portion. Let's see. You can see it's quite messy. There's kind of just, you know, paint brushes and paint marks, you know, on the side here and stuff, and so we're gonna clean all of that up today. Oh, I do remember that we did kind of a primer, we weren't priming, but we did a beginner entry level knowledge, I guess, trying to phrase things correctly, into enamel paints, why we use them on figures, and kind of how we do it, and we started that with this one. So I'll continue to talk through that as we're working on this today, but a majority of this is just going to be me getting up close and personal and kind of correcting, you know, and painting and fixing things. So this is about as close as I can get it. Hopefully you guys will be able to see remotely what I'm doing. I'll be switching in between with a couple of brushes this time, so I've got a bunch of random tools here. Most of these are kind of my junky brushes, so you can see that the tips are, let me see if I can zoom in. Come on, camera. You can see the tips are like pretty nasty. These are very well-worn brushes. I do not really paint details with these brushes. I use them for mixing, and that's pretty much it. You can see I was working on stuff earlier, so it's like, you know, I've got paint on it. I'll also be using this tool, which we talked about on Wednesday. This is a Gaia Notes product. It's basically like a really fine-tipped sponge that you can use to wipe off paint. And so I just started using this product kind of on the last kit that I was working on, and it is recommended by Japanese modelers to use, which is why I was curious about it. And so I enjoy it, but it's not needed to paint eyes, so just consider this like an extra thing that I kind of do. But it's really great at wiping off like big smudges, which you'll see when we start painting eyeballs. Other than that, that's pretty much all I got to talk about. And I do a bunch of other brushes here. I don't know if I'll be using these today, probably not. I might pull one or two out, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we'll be doing today is I'm going to clean up the details, like I just said, on this piece here. We kind of painted all of this purple on Wednesday, and then I let it sit, so I got to do all the cleanup. I did gloss her shoes, and so we can do some of the cleanup of the edges of the shoes. Let's see. So kind of hard to tell, but the edges here are kind of rough, and so I really want to smooth those down, and then I'll just lightly spray pearls on them again, and hopefully that'll be enough to kind of blend everything in. We'll also be painting her eyes today, or at least hoping to paint all the eyelashes. So this kit is kind of unique. She comes with two faces, and let's see, get this zoomed in. So yeah, she comes with defined eyes, which is something that's great, you know, for starter garage kits. We've already painted the skin on this, and it's fully glossed, and so it's ready for details. But a lot of kits don't come with, like, you know, defined eyelashes or a scooped out eye, and so this will make showing you guys what I do really easy. I also have another faceplate here, and I did take the liberty of pre-mixing an eyelash color that I think will work, and so I just kind of dabbed it on there to see what it will look like. And so we'll be probably using this color, but I'm not quite sure. I gotta clean up this eye and see if I like it first. Really, eyelash colors, it does not matter what color you paint them. A lot of times, you know, garage kits and anime drawings and all sorts of things use black or like a really, really dark brown as your eyelash color. And you can certainly do that, and that's kind of the industry standard. But it's also fun to experiment with different eyelash colors, and so I tried using a darker brown on her as her eyelash, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I kind of really like the idea of having a softer eyelash, and when it goes up against her hair, the contrast is really subtle but nice. So let's see. There we go. So yeah, it's not too crazy. It really fits in with her eye color, or her hair color, but we'll see. So anyway, let's get started. I'm gonna try to do all of the paintwork on this first before moving to the eyelashes. So let's check, make sure everything's running. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start by trying to clean up some of this purple that we applied on Wednesday. I'm gonna put on my glove here so I can hold it, move this. Try to keep everything free when I'm working on my detail stuff. And what you're really gonna do after you apply your base color and wait for it to dry and everything, you're gonna take a more precise paintbrush and really just try to clean up paint that is in the places you don't want it to be, whether it's in a crack along the line of a clothing fold or whatever. You want to aim for really clean lines. And so what I'm doing is basically just wiping the paint off in the area I don't want it, which is along this strap. And then that's pretty much it. I feel like I already said that's pretty much it a lot today. And this is where the sponge comes in handy, because when you rub off this stuff, sometimes excess is kind of left, and so the sponge just soaks up all of that extra enamel. And I really don't put a lot of enamel, and what I'm using right now is enamel thinner, by the way. So we painted in enamel, and we're thinning with enamel thinner, and because the enamel is weaker or it's different chemically than the lacquer top coat and the lacquer that we applied, putting the thinner on it is not going to affect this kind of pearly white layer of the lacquer and the lacquer top coat. So this is the whole basis behind painting details with enamel, is that you can get really clean lines just by working slowly and removing paint, the enamel paint, and you won't take off any of the lacquer. So I'm gonna be like leaning in quite a lot too, because I like to get up really close. So if you guys see my face out of the corner of the eye, it's because I'm getting in crazy close. This is really just it. So you're gonna paint the pieces and then slowly wipe away stuff, and that's the enamel detailing process. But it can be very time consuming depending on how perfectionist you want to get. And this tends to take me a while because I like to get really close and make sure that everything is perfect and every line is like the way I want it. So this will be very much like a calm painting stream. But as always, if you guys have any questions at all, please message me or comment and I will respond, because I'm right here. No more noise gating with that airbrush booth. I just wish that we had my music and not this lo-fi DMCA free stuff, but I was getting flagged way too much. And I'll try to zoom in also and show you guys up close once I get like a line where I really want it. What I will also be doing periodically is zooming in with a little magnifying glass that I have on my desk. So I'll be pulling it kind of this way and looking at it. And I do this on smaller garage kits to kind of give myself an extra view of what those lines are looking like. So if they're perfectly straight, if they need to be adjusted a little, that's just something that I personally do. And there's no need for anyone else to do it if you don't see the need, but it got to a point where I felt like I wasn't getting the results I wanted until I really zoomed in. And I definitely know, like, some Japanese builders, I've seen them post on Twitter how they use, you know, big magnifying setups, or they've got big TVs they hook up their setup to and they work under that. But a lot of those dudes also work with like 1/24th scale, so that's really small. Okay. We're also not really gonna see the bottom of this apron, this portion here, because it's gonna be covered by her ribbon. But even so, I want to make sure it's as clean as I get it. Yeah, this sponge has been really helpful actually. Like, the more I use it, the more I like it. Just because a lot of times these paintbrushes don't soak up the enamel that I'm wiping off. So you end up with like streaks of enamel. And then you have to take all the time to try to brush all of that off. And what I used to do, and what I have here also, are a bunch of precision Q-tips. So this is kind of the rough one, and then I have these really fine pointed ones. These are Tamiya brand. This is just like a generic nail art brand from Amazon. And I used to use those all the time to like do the wiping off, besides my paintbrush here. And I found that it works fine. But I was running into issues where I would get too ambitious and I'd be like scraping it, and eventually the top coat would kind of start to come off because the abrasiveness of the toothpicks was too much. And so I don't have that issue with this sponge. It's very soft, it goes on and soaks everything up, and I don't have to deal with any of the scratching. So that's another reason why I like it. What I'm doing now is I'm going to slowly try to work up this ribbon, or her strap. I did paint a little bit over the side, and so I need to remove the side while keeping the kind of middle of the triangle intact. We'll see how well this works. I'm gonna try to adjust too so you guys can see it a little better. It's hard because the angle. Maybe I should change my. There we go. Oh, that helps a lot actually. The light is a little harsh, and so a lot of times these enamels go on glossy, and so given the light reflection, it can be hard to see the details and where the enamel actually is. And honestly, I can't say how long like this detailing process takes me. It's very much a while, but it does depend on each kit. Okay, there's a little bit of a line here that I need to smooth out. Uneven. Okay. Oh, hopefully I didn't. Oh, I think I pushed this a little bit. Maybe not. Should be good. Yeah, you guys can still see it, even though I think I bumped it. Oh, I did bump it. And this. Nope. I'll just have to zoom out. Move this in. Weird hair. So I don't know if there's really like a correct way to be doing this. What I do try to do is go and brush kind of in one stroke upwards, and that way I get a full range of motion with it. I'm not an actual painter, so I don't paint on flat surfaces or anything. So I could be using my paintbrush totally wrong here, but really I just go in brief strokes and I try to get a little bit off at a time. I'm not very good at, you know, precision going all the way up and doing it super clean. Also, this paintbrush is so tiny, it holds so little enamel thinner that it's easier just for me to make these quick strokes. Okay, we are getting there. Still some stuff on the side of this. I'll try to keep an eye on the time too. It's very easy for me to just get really lost in these enamel details and end up spending hours on it. So we'll see how far we get, and then at 9 I'd like to at least get the base coat of the eyelashes down so you guys can see all that. I also did touch on it before, but I think for some portions in this section of the stream, I will need to be doing some of this stuff off camera. Otherwise, it's just going to take eons for these eyes to get finished. What I mean by that is I do basically paint eyes layer by layer, and so if we waited every single time, it would just be weeks of like eye painting one thing, and that's not really fun. Okay, what's happening here? Candy spot. I'm not sure how visible this will, like the differences here of me removing the paint are on the camera. It's like, to me this line looks super uneven, but I'm not sure how the camera is displaying it. And you also have to flow with the sculpt, so there's only so much you can do if like the sculpt is uneven. You can try to correct it to some extent, but I've definitely had times where things are just literally sculpted asymmetrically, and the best you can do is try to kind of follow along the line of what the sculptor did. There we go, a little better. Post photos between layers. That's a good idea, Canon. Yeah, or at least I'll show you guys on stream through photos what I did, and it really shouldn't be that much. I actually have not like the problem with that will be the eyes, but I haven't actually decided what style I want to paint the eyes. So at least with original characters, you can make them as complex or as simple as you want. So we could, you know, do a lot of layers or not a lot. It just depends. Okay. I think what I'm gonna do here is just thin a little bit of this paint and kind of paint that area where it's got a indent on it. So we did brew this paint up last time. This is a purple that was pretty close to the one that we base coated all of the apron and stuff with, but it was mixed with enamel, and so I just thinned that a little bit with the enamel thinner, and now I'm spinny. Gonna go in and try to correct this line. There we go. Okay. Once you correct a line, you just, you know, gotta wait a little bit for it to dry, and then you can go back and continue the work. So we're gonna work on the other side. which seems like it's a lot easier actually. Let me move this again. So you can see how glossy that is on camera. Here, this off. Wiping off your work in between too will really show you how clean the line looks, or if there's stuff you need to do to it. Seems intuitive, but I don't like to let the area get too messy because then it kind of distracts from what I actually do need to remove. How are we doing here? And I always kind of find that removing more is better than less. Oftentimes I end up just applying too much. And when you think that you're far enough, you're still probably covering some details. At least for me, I am. So. Sponge also helpful because it doesn't really go into like areas. It's very conformative to a surface, so you can remove stuff and it won't affect the paint surrounding it. We're getting really close to the edge here. I want to take it a little further. You really just want to remove all of the purple along the back of the white straps here. Then that will make the white strap so much more defined. Oh yeah, getting real close there. And I'm very much like rotating the piece, looking at it at different angles, and making sure that it looks good from all angles. Because it's one thing to like look at it from the side and then you look at it on the front and it turns out you took off a bunch of paint, you know. Figure is 3D, it's not a flat canvas, and so it will look different depending on where you take off the paint. Okay. Like either a fuzzy or something. Let me see. What you can't do is if the surface is dry and you think you have like, whoops, oh, never mind. Need that a little more. I think I just scratched off some of that paint. What I was gonna say before I scratched some off was that if you think there's like a little fuzzy or dust or something getting on there, you can brush it off gently with either a paintbrush or the Q-tip. But I took it off. That's no mine, because we'll just paint again. Okay. Let me see what it looks like so far. You can see we're really getting that kind of clean line going along the side here. This one you can see is kind of uneven. You can see kind of, this triangle is not straight, right? So it extends out this way and then goes back in. hard to describe, but basically the line isn't flush with the strap, and so what I want to do is just remove some of the paint until it's straighter and closer to that strap line. At this point, you should probably know your garage kit pretty intimately. Like you've done all the sanding on it, you've primed and painted and puttied all the areas that you didn't think looked good in the first place, and so your eye will adjust to the areas that don't look right. Like, I know this strap forms a triangle, but my paint job does not reflect that, so it's my job to correct that. I'm very, very much also one of those people that will just sit here and work on something until I feel like it's correct. So I apologize in advance if this stream takes longer. Okay, what I also just noticed here is there's a weird hair that kind of found its way into the kit paint job, or maybe it was there before, and so I'm gonna try to get it out. Might be a little tough though. Oh, there we go. And should have, yep. Why you always keep kind of tweezers nearby. That way you can pull it up, and it's definitely not going to be visible here on this camera. EB. No, probably not. There's a tiny, tiny piece of dust, like a hair that found its way in there, and so you want to remove those from your paint job as soon as possible, because they get embedded in your paint. It can be really difficult to remove them, and they can actually kind of alter the surface of your paint, meaning like it will follow the curvature of that hair rather than the kit itself. Really something that's not too big of a deal on clothes surfaces, but you get a piece of hair, an eyelash or something stuck in your paint job for your eyes, that sucks. You gotta try to get that out. Okay. It's just not coming off, I think. This one here can come off. Let me move this paintbrush a little bit closer to the surface of this purple. And there's another hair. The hair will just kind of find its way. There. What also helps to remove hairs is if you wipe off your paintbrush onto your finger or onto your glove, rather than your paper towel, because your paper towel will contain dust particles and little pieces of, the fibers of the paper towel. And so that's really easy to introduce into your kit. So I kind of alternate. You probably notice me brushing on my paper towel and then brushing on my finger. When I brush on paper towel, it's just bad habit. I'm trying to break free of that habit and been making more of a conscious effort not to do that, but it's really difficult. I kind of developed again, I'm not like a formal artist. I don't have an art background. And so I've really developed a bad habit of using and abusing my brushes. And so I'm trying to take steps to correct that by not, you know, dipping the whole brush in thinner, by not, you know, coating it in paint and getting it super nasty, but it's tough. I'm adding a little more purple on the side here. This is getting really close to being good though. Again, see, like I should not be doing that. And I do think this is more just me reflecting and kind of talking about myself, but I think at least I feel like there's a certain level of paint job that people have come to expect from me, and probably what you are watching this stream for. And a lot of that, the result of that and the finality of that is because I spend all of this time painting and doing enamel details, cleaning things up, outlining lines if they need it. I spend so much more time on that. And so, yeah, just the more time you put into things, hopefully the better results you'll have. Also, experience helps, but I still find, even though I have all this experience, it takes me forever. But yeah, what you guys will see here is the bulk of how I get to these paint jobs that I get. It's because I just sit here and clean things up until I'm happy with them. And it's more of a reflection as well on how I view this craft, because honestly, like this back here, you're not even gonna see it. Let's be real, like the hair is gonna cover it probably, but I know it's there, and so I, you know, want to correct it. Okay, there we go. I think if I do it this way. There we go. Yep. Sometimes all about getting that right angle, angling your paintbrush. I think maybe it is slightly uneven now that I look at this piece, because I pretty much wiped everything off at this point, but I'm still seeing that kind of dent in the strap. Let me look at it with a magnifying glass. Yeah, I think that is just the sculpt. Little dusties. So let me clean off this bottom edge here. A little bit of purple poking out. Okay. Alright. Let me take one more look at this. Yeah, it looks like that's just the strap. So, and I imagine that's probably going to be the case with this entire figure. This isn't, you know, like a super professionally sculpted figure with flawless casts and all of that. It was very much like a handmade one. So we're probably going to run into some inconsistencies with how the straps look and how her ruffles look. So let me just briefly clean up this line a little bit more, and then we're going to start along the top of the ribbons. Wrap up with this triangle strap here. That's pretty good. A little bit here that bothers me. Really, I'm just like so thankful for figuring out this enamel method, because, well, I'm thankful and yet not thankful because it's been great for like my perfectionism, but at the same time, again, my perfectionism. But it is very forgiving, and like the enamel in the cup dries up so quickly, or your paint, you know, wherever you're putting your paint, that it's easy to just like mix a tiny bit more and then, or like reactivate it, because again, enamels will reactivate once you introduce the thinner, and then you can just keep going. Oops. A little bit more here. Okay. Oh, look. That's pretty fine considering we're not gonna see it. I might go in and fix it again later, but for now we're gonna move on kind of. We've got basically this part done, up this part, and we're gonna work around the straps now. And I didn't paint like a ton on here, so we'll see. I'm gonna go in first with my spongy here. Alternatively, you can use a larger paintbrush. And I'm just wiping off a good portion of the purple that I kind of splattered on when we were trying to base coat this. Luckily, because this kit does have some pretty defined lines, we can just wipe the top of those lines and everything will come off. It's the side edges that are a little trickier. And as well as stuff like her collar here. Hopefully you guys can see this. Okay, so I don't do too much with the spongy brush. And I'm really just going to start at one end and kind of work my way around. And I'm going to do the collar last, I think. So the inner white portion of the collar is detached from the purple parts, I guess. And so we're going to work around the apron and then go back in between, or in the collar area, and clean that up last. I've been using this particular Tamiya brush a lot lately. I usually use around 3.0 to do cleanup, but I've been dealing with a lot of smaller kits these days. And this one does tell me a tiny brush. Doesn't hold a lot of enamel thinner, but it helps me because I do these short brush strokes. A long, really thin paintbrush will also take off a lot. There's a little bit of imagining or, you know, moving the direction of the paint we can do to give it the illusion of being straight, even though it's not. I think I touched on that already, but for these straps, it's okay if it doesn't, like if I don't wipe off all the white along the top straps here. As long as the line is curved and straight, no one will notice. That's a big thing for enamel that I really try to focus on, is getting clean, straight lines. They can be curved and stuff, but you really want it to be completely straight, your line. Again, gotta come in with the sponge, because that tiny paintbrush just doesn't wipe off enough. You also want to be careful you're not messing with the straight line. What I might do is round these corners too. That way it looks a little bit more like it just has a round apron. There's a little bit of paint kind of along the top of this strap. What I also might touch on, and I don't know if I'll get to it today, is that enamel wash I was talking about, which is basically just thinning enamel and then setting it into cracks, like, you know, the apron here. That will kind of depend once I finish putting on this base coat of enamel. If I feel like the area needs a little more definition, or if the piece needs more definition, then I will go in and do the wash. I do also want to stress that you don't want to put on too much enamel thinner on your paintbrush when you're wiping away details. Seems like, of course, but it will deposit and take off more enamel than you anticipate. So that's something to be mindful of. Fortunately, the sponge also sometimes leaves like a stain of the enamel, like it takes a lot off, but then you can kind of still see it. So I'm still trying to figure that part out. How do I remove every last bit of enamel? Your brand of enamel will also play a part in how much comes off, or if it's kind of streaky. I find that the Tamiya enamels are a little less forgiving when it comes to removing paint compared to Guy Notes brand. And so when I remove Tamiya enamel from my kit, it comes off really easy, but it leaves a lot of streaks. So you have to spend more time removing the paint from the area. Whereas Guy Notes is pretty solid. It just like wipes off what you want to wipe off, and that's like it. Very little cleanup mess left. Whoa, my little thing went flying. Let me look at this up close. That's actually coming together really well. There's a little bit of a curve I want to define over here. And there's still a little bit to take off from the top here. Oh. That's pretty good. Getting there. Curve bothered me a little bit. I'll take off a little bit more here. Oh, much better. Okay. Tiny, tiny, tiny corner I want to round here. Sometimes what you can also do, if you're not getting the results with the brush, is go in with your precision Q-tip and stuff. But downside of that is that I've found that if your layer is too thick, it will also just kind of scratch it. I'll try to illustrate that later. Sometimes what I mean is that the toothpick goes in a little too roughly, ends up doing more damage. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm gonna continue along. We're pretty much done with the front at this point. So you can see that this line is really super straight here. I'm only really referring to like the curve along here and then the straight line. So we're gonna kind of work kind of along the sides here now and then clean up the back because I didn't do that. But you can see from far away it looks pretty straight. Let's see. Sorry, I just saw your comment, Leo. Is it safe to spray enamel over acrylic? Tommy and Vallejo are the only brands available in my country. Generally, for beginners, it's not recommended to spray enamels over acrylics. The length of, or the list of strengths basically goes acrylic is the weakest, enamel is the kind of middle ground, and then lacquer is the strongest. I've seen kind of variations of that posted sometimes where like enamel is considered the weakest and so you can spray acrylics over them, but I personally have not had good results by spraying enamels over acrylics, just as I have not had super great results occasionally with spraying lacquer over enamel. But again, it really depends, it's situational, and like part of the whole process of this like enamel layering method is spraying lacquer top coats over enamel, and so you know, what is often touted as like the way to go can sometimes be counterintuitive because people are doing things different ways. But yeah, for acrylics, I can, especially if you're dealing with Vallejo, which is a water-based acrylic, that would be considered the weakest one. So I'm not sure how an enamel thinner would react with that. A lot of times we say that those types of paints eat away at the paint job. And that means that they're basically dissolving the paint underneath because they are stronger in terms of like chemicals, and so they will mess around with it. But good thing to do is always just test. So if you have, you know, a spare piece of plastic or some sort of, you know, junk thing that you can use, give it a try, you know, and see how those brands are compatible, because I've you know, heard many things over the years, and I've tried things and it has worked out differently than what's been told. So I always urge people to do tests and follow, you know, what you want to do. Don't accept my words or some rando dude's words on a forum board until you've tried things for yourself. Because again, like everything, paints wax differently depending on your location, your temperature, your altitude. What works for one person may not work for you, and vice versa. So always be willing to experiment. I would not be this far today if I did not experiment and just straight up ignore what people told me to do. This hobby, you can do whatever you want, but again, test on like something that you won't ruin, because the last thing you want to do is test it out on a paint or on a kit that's like, you know, you're really proud of, and then have it all go to poop. That's happened to me before, especially with sealers. Sealers can be tricky. And back when I sprayed with spray cans, that's when it was really like, you had to be careful, because those spray cans are so temperamental. And they will sometimes like leave your kit frosty, or if you spray just slightly too far away, they will get all grainy finish, and it's just not a good time. Okay. We don't need to really go too crazy on this strap here. It actually looks like I did a fair amount of wiping that down already. I am, however, going to go in with one of my fine toothpicks or fine Q-tips now, because there's an area here that I want to scrape down. That is a little hard to reach with the paintbrush, so. If you have a really stubborn piece of paint that won't come off, that's when I find using those Q-tips can be helpful, because it will take it off really quickly. I hope I answered your question, Leo. I kind of went on a tangent and then was just like, do it. But in general, not recommended to put enamels over acrylics, just because acrylic is weakest. Tamiya is an odd exception though, because their paints, you know, they say they're acrylic, you know, but really they thin with alcohol, or Tamiya thinner. So that's kind of unusual when we talk about, you know, acrylic paints. And I think I touched on this in one of my streams, but the conventional naming of paints, it can often be very confusing, because a lot of times when we refer to these, we are talking about the solvent that they are compatible with. And so what I mean by that, and for those who aren't familiar with the definition of a solvent, it's basically a solution that you dissolve some sort of thing in. And so for enamel paints, for example, the solvent is enamel thinner. And for lacquer paints, the solvent is lacquer thinner. But with acrylic paints, and what we kind of get into here is that lacquer paints have acrylic pigments, but we still call them lacquer paints. And acrylic, Tamiya acrylics, are acrylic pigments, but they thin in alcohol, and Tamiya thinner. So really the whole definition of like acrylic paint can apply to everything from Vallejo paints all the way up to like Gaia Notes paints, because they are acrylic pigments, they are acrylic paints. However, the thinner they're in is what matters. And so stuff like Vallejo thins in water, so we call them water-based acrylic paints. And Tamiya's in their own range again, because they're basically synthetic, like thinned paints, and so they thin in alcohol or they're thinner. Stuff like Createx paints, those are also water-based acrylics. And so really when you're picking a paint, you want to kind of try to define what thinner you want, based on its toxicity and then go from there. A lot of people, myself included, start out with the water-based, acrylic paints. So crafty, junky paints from Michael's, Vallejo, higher end hobby stuff, a lot of miniatures. So if you're working with Warhammer miniatures or anything like that, typically you're painting in water-based acrylics. Then after that, the scale kind of goes up to like enamels and you're thinning with that. And then finally lacquer, which is pretty much all airbrushed. So the difference here, I guess, is that you can both hand paint and airbrush with water-based acrylics, or like, thinner water compatible paints. And to some extent you can, also do that with enamels. Typically they're used for hand brushing, but you can thin them and spray them through your airbrush. But lacquer paints are almost always through your airbrush. Unless you have, a really proper solution introduced that will stop the drying of your lacquer. It's called a retarder. Unless you introduce that retarder, you will not get good results by hand brushing lacquer paint. You can also use retarder in your airbrush if you are dealing with paint that dries too quickly. It's a slowing agent. That's what it does, is it stops the paint from drying so quickly. So you're introducing that when you want to airbrush your paint, or when you want to hand brush, your paint will not dry as quickly. And there are definitely also water compatible retarders. I'm pretty sure Vallejo makes like a retarder, but it's been a while since I researched that. Okay, we are looking good on this side actually. I'm pretty pleased with how this is coming out. So we're gonna work kind of on the other side here and clean this up, and then we will clean up the collar. And that should be it for this one. Collar is kind of messy though, so that might take a little bit of time. What you can also do, if you are, wondering how your kit is looking, give me 1 second to clean this line up, and I will show you. Okay, a little bit more cleanup here. I'm really just abusing this sponge. Never realized how much I liked it till notice it. Okay, close enough for now. So what you can do, if you're, wondering about your lines and stuff, is just start assembling your kit. Ooh, a little paint came off of that. I pushed it in. Really, you can just like kind of gauge it by assembling your kit and seeing, what it looks like, and that will help you out as well. If your lines look great while you're assembling it, then chances are you're doing a good job and you don't need to go too crazy, In the end, there are definitely, things that people aren't gonna see and shortcuts you can take. It just depends how much you want to go. Even like this one, you can see we didn't really paint the inside here. We certainly had the option of painting the inside of the skirt, but nobody is going to see that. She's going to be displayed like this, and she also has ruffles that go along the edge, so there's just not a need to do that. Same kind of with like the bloomers here. You're not really going to see any of this kind of detail once it goes on. It's nice to add, but no one's going to be looking at it from this angle, so it doesn't really matter that much. There was like a funny discussion that I saw back when I was a little more active on like Facebook threads and stuff, where someone asked if people bother painting panties because like no one's really gonna see the panties majority of the time. And it was funny reading people's responses because some people are really, really adamant about painting underwear. And other people are like, no, I just leave. I don't paint it at all. I don't mask it off or do any of that. That was funny to read because I have always painted the panties of a kit, you know, whether you're gonna see them or not. I think it's just like something fun that sculptors include. You know, we're not like Barbie dolls on a lot of these garage kits. So I thought it was funny that people would choose to like avoid it to cut time. I am team panty. I will paint them. And especially for clients, it's gotta happen. You gotta ask clients what their favorite panty color is or what color they want their panties of their kit, and that's always like a, hey, not to be like really weird, but what color panties do you want your figure painted? So far a lot of just white. A lot of people like the pure white route, it seems. Some sculptors though are really like sexy about what they sculpt even though you won't see it, and it's always surprising sometimes to me to get these like, you know, really nice kits that are super cute and then they've got super sexy panties. I'm just like, how did that happen? That's funny. But yeah, we enjoy painting everything here. I appreciate all aspects of a sculptor's kit, so it's always fun to see what people will choose to do and how artists will choose to, you know, sculpt their work. Alright, let's here. And hopefully you did not take that conversation as something distasteful, because chances are if you're watching me, we're all artists here and we can appreciate the work that goes into building these kits. And lingerie is just part of that sometimes. And there's plenty of kits that are only sculpted in lingerie. And so, something interesting. I don't know if I have any kits that are only lingerie though. Yeah, it's really just nice, Leo, right? To see the little details that a sculptor puts in. I always get a kick out of that. Even, sometimes they go all the way down to like what shape the pinholes or like the keyholes are on the kit. So if you've ever owned a bird kit, so we call them the birds, from Whoopie Pie, so it's a sculptor slash circle named Whoopie Pie. She takes the time to sculpt all of the little keyholes in the shape of a heart, which is something that I own these bird kits and I have a few of them at this point, but I never really noticed it, or I don't notice it or think about it until I open the kit up and look at it and, you know, take note of the pieces. And so that's just so cute, like the fact that they took the time to be like, oh, I want, you know, little hearts where the keyholes should be. That's just so thoughtful. I love it when sculptors do stuff like that. Okay, I'm really trying to get this stubborn area of paint to come off, and it's just not, and it's probably because I've already hit the boundary line of where the strap is. I'm gonna look at this from another angle. Yep. Need to go in and change the angle here. Yep, that did it. I'll try to wrap this piece up, and then we'll move on to the eyelashes, at least getting the base color down, which will not take long. And then we can shift back. I might also move this stream a little bit longer today, depending on where we're at. Just because, like, majority of what I'm doing here is time consuming. Oh, a little bit to clean up here. So yeah, no pressure if you guys like need to head out or if you can't make all of these upcoming streams, because really this is pretty much it, just the details and eye painting. Thankfully, this kit is so simple. There's really not too much more to do. We do have a fun thing that I want to do for the base though. So once we get done with this, I will probably spend a stream working on the base. I always like to do, or I try to do, some fun stuff on a base, even if it's going to be relatively simple, like you know, just an acrylic base. I like to add something onto that base or make a little prop or something to give it a little bit more contrast. Really depends on how I'm feeling though. Okay, how are we doing here? Okay. The bottom needs to be cleaned up. Yes, fries, the base. It will be pretty simple, but I kind of experimented with something and I really liked how it came out, and so we will be taking some time to do that. And just to show you guys easy things that you can do to make your kit stand out a little bit more. I admit though, I am not like a crazy base person, so I don't really take a ton of time and invest a ton of time in making like elaborate diorama bases. That's just not really my forte. You know, adding all of the train materials and stuff like that to bases, so you're not going to see that here. But you will see something that's a little more up my alley and what I typically like to do for kits. I've never even used like water effects on a base, and I know pretty much everybody that's a long haul artist like me has done that at this point, but you know, like sculpting, not sculpting, but making like a beach scene or something like that, and I've never done that, so that would be something fun to do sometime in the future. Get some of that, you know, water textural sculpting stuff and add seashells and things. But I haven't really found a figure that I wanted to do that on, so. Okay. We're just cleaning up this back here. There's this really stubborn paint line. I might go in with my Tamiya toothpick actually, see what I can do. This is kind of what I mean when I meant scratching it off, that it'll take off quite a bit of paint even though it's so small. And then after you kind of remove that paint, it's easier to wipe it off with your paintbrush. Eye painting, I've pretty much tried to avoid using these tiny Q-tips lately actually, because I get really into it and I do scratch into the layer of top coat that I put on, so I end up accidentally scratching through things, and so I pretty much resorted right now to using only this sponge and then small paintbrushes to paint my eyes. So kind of mental note to try to avoid doing that when I'm showing you guys. Again, sorry if this is not the most exciting stream. Okay, see where the line is. Be tough. I can get this as straight as I want. Also, has anyone watched any decent shows or animes this season that I should be aware of? The only thing that I've watched most recently is season 4 of Castlevania, which was fantastic. Really, really great way to kind of wrap up the story. At least I think it will be wrapped up. I'm a big Castlevania fan, so it was really great seeing everyone again. I will not spoil this show, but if you haven't watched it yet, I very highly recommend it. Seasons 1 and 2 are really great, and then 3 I think kind of lags a little bit, but then this last one, 4, made up for that. I also, 1 second, gotta fix this first. Getting in focus mode. There we go. AP. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. I'm kind of dipping down into the actual portion of the figure that should be purple, and so I'll have to adjust that later. That's what I was just gonna say, Leo, and then I cut myself off as I started reading the manga of Jujutsu Kaisen, mostly because I had heard that the anime was so good from a couple of friends. And I'm more of a manga reader, so I wanted to give it kind of a chance. Plus I have a Shonen Jump subscription. So I think I'm gonna read a little bit more of the manga, and then if I like it, I will attempt to watch the anime. I've heard that the fight scenes are really great, like the choreography and the animation. So that's a big thing I look for when I'm trying to watch like a shonen anime. So seems exciting. I did not get very far. I only read basically like up to chapter 6, so it's like nothing. But I read the prequel, which like kind of confused me because the way that Shonen Jump app has it set up is chapters like 1, and on were the actual show / manga. They have a prequel, which was like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and 0.4. It's like 4 parts, and so the whole time I was reading this, I was like, this doesn't look like the dudes that I've been seeing like floating around. I think Gojo was in it, but the other people I like had no idea who they were, and then it switched after that. So I was like, okay. I guess I'm just reading this fresh now, and so that kind of threw me off. But it looks good. It looks like it has potential. I honestly get Naruto vibes from this, and I know that's probably like, oh my god. But the characters and like the setup of 4 people, you got your blind teacher, or masked teacher, and then the main protag who has the power, and if you watch it, you'll know. The short-haired girl that has a loud mouth, like it all really reminds me of Naruto. But hopefully I'll be changed. My opinion will be changed as I read more. But I was just like, this feels really familiar. Let's see what Monkey says. You see that Katsu's gonna open up their hotel room block next year? No, I haven't seen that yet, actually. I haven't really focused on anything convention related. But I'll have to look into that. It seems like because a lot of people in the US are getting vaccinated now, things will probably be closed through this summer, but conventions and different things are probably going to try to aim for opening up this winter and through next year, and then things will get back to normal slowly. That will be great. It's been a long time since I think any of us has been to an anime convention or gaming convention. I know I certainly do miss the experience and the shopping and the seeing people and participating in things. So that will be really nice once everything starts to get back to normal. I'm still really hesitant about a lot of things, even though I'm fully vaccinated at this point. A lot of my friends are starting to go out and take vacations and stuff, and I just don't feel super comfortable with that yet. So I'm hoping that my opinion and feelings about it will change, but I'm a pretty hesitant person, so I think just being in this like COVID isolation for so long has made me kind of hesitant and distrustful. I don't know if anyone else feels like distrustful of other people, but when you go out and you see, like, especially during the height of COVID, people who are maskless just walking around, just really like was not a great thing. Did not make me have hope for humanity. But that's a personal issue. I'm like working through that. But I am excited once conventions start happening, and I really want to see people again and go out to eat and have fun with groups of friends. So that will be nice. Things we take for granted, you know, like up until through last year, you know, just business as usual, and then everything closed and you're like, wow, I could like go to a movie theater and was not concerned that the place was like disgusting. Now it's like I feel like people's, well, it depends. Attitudes will change for some people, but for a lot of people they didn't change at all. So it will just be interesting, I think, navigating the post-COVID landscape and seeing how people act. Definitely like gonna change things over the next few decades from a business perspective. A lot of people I know too, their companies are just like moving to working entirely to work from home, just because they've found out that it works. Like people are still just as productive. They don't need to be sitting in a tiny box for, you know, 8-10 hours a day to get the stuff done. And then at the same time, some other companies are demanding everyone returns back in. So it will be interesting. I think it will also affect, you know, what jobs people go for. And one of the questions people will ask was like, do you offer work from home? Or what did you do during COVID, like pandemic? You know, how did you treat your employees? I think all of those things will be important and noted during hiring and stuff like that. Okay. So I basically did finish up the straps front and behind, so kind of that outer side here. And right now I'm kind of working in the middle. I realize that time is getting a little bit closer to the 10, but we're gonna keep going here. And then I will switch over again after I finish this collar. Do the eyes. Good thing is I don't need to mix any paint, I think, so we could just go on and apply the paint. I do really want to make sure that this collar here is clean. Sorry if you guys can't see this, I'm like kind of holding it on its side. This is the only good angle I can get this strap at. Try to turn it a couple times. A little bit stubborn. There we go. Okay, this definitely needs the magnifying. There we go. Just a really tiny spot. And these are seriously like one brush stroke and you can get it straight. but you gotta be pretty accurate with your hands. And also, I guess that's another thing to bring up too. I know a lot of people who tend to have really shaky hands, and personally I don't. So like what you're seeing here, you know, is just how I paint. But if you do have shaky hands, just be patient and kind to yourself, especially when you're painting. Because a lot of my friends do have shaky hands, but they still produce really, really beautiful things. And their kits look fine, like there's nothing wrong with them. But they, you know, beat themselves over the fact that they have shaky hands. So just realize, I guess, that you can do it despite what kind of hands you have. Seems like motivational, I guess. Don't let having like hand tremors or anything distract you from producing work, because really in the end this is for yourself and your own happiness and no one else's. And as long as you're enjoying the process, like honestly, who cares? I'm gonna try to wipe off some of this. Let's see, when Katsu comes back around, I'll have a couple new pieces ready for model show. Nice! Yeah, I hope that they continue the model show. For those of you unfamiliar with what Gaming Monkey's talking about, we're referring to an East Coast anime convention that's usually held. And they are one of the few, or I guess, cons that I've been to that have a model expo, and so they, you know, display Gundams or papercraft or all sorts of things. And so I participated back in, oh my god, was it 2019 or was it 2018? I don't remember. It was a while at this point, but that was a lot of fun. And I met Monkey there. And so I'm hoping, yeah, once it all comes back up, then we will, you know, maybe I'll be able to display a few more things. I feel like a lot of what I've done the past bit has just been people's commission works though. So like in terms of actual new stuff that I have to display, I'll have to go through it and see. I don't think that I showed off my Land of the Lustrous kit yet though, so depending on when that was made was probably when, before or after KatsuCon happened. That was fun. Yeah, I've been to a lot of conventions, but not a lot of them have model expos, and so that was like a big thing of why I wanted to attend, even though I live a little far away. I wish that more more cons would do that, because there are so, like, the amount of garage kit fans and painters is pretty tiny. That's kind of why I wanted to go and, you know, show off my work. But the amount of like Gundam builders is quite large, and so I'm really surprised that that's not like more widespread, considering the amount of people that build Gundam so vastly outnumbers like people who do the work that I do. And I would think that an anime convention would be like a perfect place for tons and tons of Gundam modelers to show off their stuff. But I think it really probably just comes down to who is going to organize it and who's going to volunteer and work at it. So you gotta have a strong local community in order for that stuff to thrive. And that's the thing too, with this hobby garage kit building, is that it really is so niche that it's kind of rare to find anybody in your area that does it, unless you like convert your friends or your loved ones to do it. Your chances are you're probably doing it by yourself, or if you're going to like painting meetups, you might be the only person there doing it. A lot of Gundam builders though. Not a bad thing. I actually learned quite a bit from looking up Gunpla tutorials, and a lot of those guys are really good at documenting paints, and so, you know, huge variety of paints available. And most often they're used on Gundams, and so you can look up, you know, brand of paint and then see what it will look like on a Gundam model. or a model kit, you know, Megami device, whatever. That'll give you a good idea of how it would look on a garage kit too. It all kind of intersects, like the hobbies are separate, but a lot of this stuff overlaps. So just be kind to people in the different but separate hobbies. Similar but different. Okay. This is like acting up, I think. Area. What I'm doing now is kind of just rubbing off the side of the collar with this precision Q-tip. And then I'm gonna go in with the sponge and kind of wipe it down. There we go. Okay. There's only so much sometimes this paintbrush can do because it's just so small. Sometimes I go in with my Q-tips and erase a little more. Also the tips here of the collar that are rounded have a little bit of paint on them. Gonna really carefully try to remove that. It was just last year. What is time? What is time, monkey? Like, for real. Because it feels like eons ago that we did that. Forever ago, like seriously. I don't believe it. I really don't believe it. I seriously thought it was like 2018 or something, but now that I think about it, I didn't even move over here in 2018, so I don't know what I was thinking. Oh my god, I feel like we all aged, or at least I feel like I aged a million years from all this isolation. I've just become a hermit, a painting hermit. That's pretty much all I did this past year. That's wildness. I'm like going on and on. Oh, it was so long ago. It was just last year. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna try to round out this corner here as well. So we kind of worked our way through the top. Oh, that's tough. That's a tough one. What I'm saying is, I guess the front, we worked our way at the front and tried to smooth things out. And now we're gonna work along the sides of the collar. Just because it's on the side, it's still really important to get a clean line. There was some like indenting though with this collar that I remember just because of the sculpt, so I'm gonna try to make sure that I get that out, but it might be hard. Last con you went to and then lockdown. Yeah, I think the last con that I went to was PAX. Yeah, I think PAX. Was it in Boston? I don't remember. But that was in March, and so we went in March, and not even like a week later, all of the stuff about COVID in China started popping up, and then very shortly after that, it just started reaching the States. And so there was some sort of release that PAX did that were saying like we were like this close to canceling it because they had kept an eye out, you know, on how things were going. But at that moment in time, they had determined that it wasn't a huge threat because COVID wasn't really starting to surge at all in the US at that particular time. That's just wild. It was so, the timing was so close. And then everything started locking down like in April and stuff, and so really it's kind of crazy.
How do you want to do that?
There we go. Okay, so that's actually looking pretty nice. There's a tiny bit of leniency here with the collar. Again, as long as the line is smooth, no one's gonna really tell where the collar ends and where it begins when it's so close and sculpted to her body. Smoothing that line down slowly. This is a slightly more ominous lo-fi beat. A lot of these are pretty, you know, generic, standard, peppy ones. This one's pretty sad, actually. Or like dusk lo-fi. What is it called? Yeah, I don't know about that. Monkey, I should bring this Maid to Katsucon. Then you can judge it in real life for stream. That'd be pretty funny, actually. Okay, there we go. So we're pretty much, well, clean up this some rough excess here left. So we're gonna just do this other side and then switch over to getting the base coat down on those eyes. Again, I'm not really sure how long any of these details will take in terms of like stream quantity. So we're just gonna kind of continue and go at it. What I'll probably do in terms of like for Wednesday is get the eyes base coat down, but then not do anything. So on Wednesday we'll work on the eyes, and then after that I will probably paint the base eye color. So I'm actually not sure what eye color I want these kits to have yet, so that will give me a little time to think about it. If you have any suggestions, bring it up. Yeah, I might do it, Monkey. I did kind of create a mock image or a mock Photoshop using the sculptor's, you know, original kit, but I so far have not been sure what I want the eye color to be. So a lot of times I go in on top of painting or using a painting reference. So this one that you guys, I'll show you real quick. This is what I generated when we were airbrushing. I use this for figuring out colors and stuff, but I wasn't 100% sure about her eye color. And so what I did after all of this is I took the photo in the current projects, so that painted photo, and I just kind of went in Photoshop and changed the hair color to roughly, you know, what we painted it like, and then same with the apron color and all of that. And after that, you can kind of mess around by, you know, either adjusting the hue or going in and painting over it, you know, with a brush and seeing what colors you want. But I haven't really found anything I'm happy with yet. And I'm also not sure about the style yet. So I think I might keep it closer to being like simple and only a couple layers. I don't like the idea of going all out and giving her all this like crazy eye shine, because I don't really see this kit that way. But I say these things, and sometimes the kit just kind of comes to life on its own. And some of my best work has just been like kind of going gung-ho on it and doing whatever in the heat of the moment. So we'll see if that happens. Okay, I'm gonna scrape off a little bit of this paint if I can. I'm just kind of gauging what will come off and what won't, because this section of the collar was a little bit rougher. So this paint, even though I'm wiping it, is not coming off quite as readily. Also not currently sure if I want to give her freckles or not. That's something that we'll have to, like, I was thinking about it and I think some of you guys recommended it and thought it would be really cute. But I really won't know until like I get those eyes on and the blush, you know. Well, blush will come after, but the eyes especially. Any like facial features, usually I end up adding them last. That was really helpful. Sponge saves everything. Oh, I just realized that I also left this reference on. Sorry guys. Been so used to doing that and using that during all of our airbrushing. But yeah, I tried green, so I thought, you know, red hair, green eyes, that's like the, you know, combo everyone does. Not a huge fan actually. I don't think that it matches well with this kit. We don't really have any other green tones going on in this kit, and so it could potentially work, but with the orange hair and the purple, it just wasn't really happening. Those are all like kind of secondary colors, and so they should match, but was not having it. Blue just doesn't seem like her eyes like should be that color. Tried that one too. And same with red. I don't think that red eyes will suit her, so I'm kind of leaning toward amber slash golden eyes, but we'll see. I don't think orange will work either. I think it will have to be something in like the yellow scheme. Yeah, I think about it. I'm not thinking about purple either, so I'm kind of limits my choices here. Brown or maybe, you know, amber or yellow. And it's been a long time since I painted yellow eyes too, if at all. I know I painted kind of orangish yellow eyes on my horn kit. An original character that kind of cycles through here. A lot of times though I kind of opt for muted oranges or browns when I'm trying to go for softer eyes. And also, since this kit will have those, hopefully, softer brown eyelashes, that might change how I see this kit too coming together. Alright, we're almost done here with this piece, but it's in a kind of a difficult location to work with, and so I'm really very slowly getting rid of this paint, but taking me a little while. I always say I'm gonna do things in a certain time, and then it ends up taking like 2 or 3 times longer. That's just honestly how it is for me, and so it can be tough sometimes, you know, estimating what I want to do when it comes to like these details and stuff. A lot of times I overextend and I say, oh, I'll get it done and blah blah blah, and then I don't. Okay, there we go. So if you guys can't see what I'm doing because my hand's blocking it, I'm just slowly wiping away the inner corner of this collar with enamel paint and thinner. It's being very stubborn. I think I applied quite a bit, kind of globbed it on too thick, and so it's taking a little while to thin down. What I could do is go in with a, you know, Q-tip or something, but then you risk kind of scratching that paint that is where you want it. And so it's a lot easier to just take my brush. It takes a little longer, but it's a lot easier for me to take my brush and kind of just go along the contours of the collar and get it off that way, and then wipe the excess off with the sponge. This, I think, might be almost as good as I can get it, though. For the stubborn spots, again, we're kind of going in with the Q-tip, pointed Q-tip toothpick thing, and removing it that way. And sometimes, again, those hairs can play into that. So if you are not able to brush off an area, there might be a hair there. There we go. Oh, also, is this focusing properly? Sorry guys, if you weren't able to see. I guess I can show it at this point. I'm just gonna check it. So we're pretty clean at this point. You can see that we've really cleaned up all those lines. Putting it straight, it will focus it. It wants to focus. There we go. You can see it's pretty straight and along the lines of where her collar would be. The back triangles are also pretty clean. You can see if you tilt it at an angle, we're going along those contours of the ribbons there. So there's no, you know, backlash of the paint coming up or it being uneven. We just want a smooth surface. And so, let me, excuse me, get this side off real quick. And I think that's enough for now for me to go move on and start laying down the base coat for her eyes. A lot of times what I do these days is I, you know, finish up all of the wrap up for a piece and I set it aside. So I'm like, oh, this looks great, you know, and then I set it aside and then I leave it for a little while and I come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes. And that way, if there's anything wrong with it, I'll notice it, you know, when I'm clearly just looking for defects and problems with the kit or with my paint job. You know, a lot of times we're working here in like super macro up close using, you know, a magnifying glass. And it can, your eyes can definitely take a toll. They can get unfocused. They can be zooming in so long that it starts to be difficult to see other things. And so what I find helpful is taking a break and focusing on something far away or going and getting a snack, because that way you'll be able to return back and come in with fresh eyes. I've definitely like gone downstairs and it's just my eyes have been straight up unfocused and so like one eye is blurry and so take breaks as needed. Alright, so we will not be taking a break. We're gonna move on and start painting on the color of her eyelashes that I think we're gonna go with. I'm just gonna go ahead and lay down the base coat on these and then if I don't like it we can always wipe it off. I have decided to pre-mix some kind of nice brown here that I will be using as her eyelashes. I decided not to do a darker brown just because I felt like it. Also, you may have noticed that her paint got a tiny bit scratched on, let's see, on her neck. So you can see this kind of dent in the scratch. And that's because when we put in her apron here and pushed it down, it pushed that paint up. So tight fits will do that, they will mess with your paint job. Generally, it's not really an issue, you know, because you're going to be displaying it and you're not going to see it anyway. But just be careful when you're test fitting your pieces. A lot of times once I paint a piece, I try to not have it interact with the other pieces as much as possible because anything can screw up a paint job. And any, you know, if tight fitting pieces can definitely chip off paint from other, you know, parts of the kit. And so part of the reason why we do all that like preemptive work with the magnet fitting and stuff is because we know the pieces will fit then. So there's no need to like keep jamming them into areas or test fitting them again. Really, once you finish painting, you kind of don't want to mess with your kit until you're ready to assemble it. And you definitely don't want to like have your bare hands touching it all the time because that's going to introduce oils and you know, hairs and other things wrong with your kit. So anyway, we're gonna move on. I'm gonna just kind of base coat these eyes. I'm using my junky brush on this and I've thinned out the paint a little bit with enamel, but not a ton. So there's a fine line, especially when you're working with these raised surfaces, where if your paint is too thin, it's just gonna fall away from the top of that surface and kind of just hit the sides. And so you can maybe see what I mean here. The top like of the kit here, the top of that eyelash is lighter colored compared to the rest of the kit or the rest of the sides, and that's because the paint is just, it's too wet. It's falling off the sides of that surface and kind of going, again, it's gonna go where the area is flattest. So just be mindful of that. Try not to paint or thin your paint too much, because then you have to wait for it to dry, and that can be a pain. Also, there appears to be a bubble. I noticed this on the other hair, or on the other face, and I kind of carved it out. But there's a casting bubble that like made its way onto her eyelash, and so that's gonna be interesting. I'll try to sand that off, or not sand it off, just wipe off the paint from that area, and that way it won't be quite as noticeable. I don't know if the camera will point it out. Kind of, you can kind of see it. I gotta get in real close, but right between her two eyelashes here, so between these two eyelashes, there's a really tiny bubble of resin that I just somehow missed, somehow, despite it being on the other piece of the faceplate. So whatever. This was the alternative face anyway. Alright, so what I've done is I put on a pretty thick base coat of this on her eye layer. We're gonna let that dry, because once we let it all, you know, settle, we can wipe off the paint that we don't need. But we do want to make sure that the raised surface of her eyelash is completely covered in the paint. So we don't want there to be an unevenness in color. We want the whole thing to be coated in the same, you know, have the same coverage of paint. So luckily this paint goes on pretty thick, and so that won't be an issue. Again, when you thin, like, enamels will dry relatively quickly, so a lot of times I finish painting something and then my enamel is already dried up and I gotta thin it again. So just something to take a note of. This is her other faceplate, so this is the one with the indented eyes, and these eyes are interesting because I've never painted eyes like this, so we'll have to figure something out. Actually, what I'm gonna do after this is I'm gonna go back to that other face, because there's something that I want to do. Also, I do want to note that there are many ways to paint eyes, and one of the more popular ways, I guess, these days is using an outline. So I've noticed a lot of Japanese sculptors who paint, and it doesn't really apply to this kit because this kit has such defined eyes anyway, but if you're working with a kit that just has like an eye socket, a very common thing to do these days is to use kind of an orangish color, not pure orange, but it's kind of a reddish orange, and make an outline of your eye style. And then after that, you'll, you know, lock down that eye style and seal that, and then paint your actual eye on top of it. And a lot of the reason for that, I think, is because when you're like wiping your paint away, sometimes it will stain your kit, and so if you get that outline down, then you have a lot less chance to stain your kit with the darker paint colors. It's actually not a method that I use personally, so you can see me just laying down this regular color, and this will be the color of her eyelash. We're not doing any preemptive, you know, stenciling. Yeah, I don't know why. I think the orange is because a lot of times when you're sketching out your eyelashes or your eyes in general, and you're wiping stuff away, if you use a darker color straight out of the gate, it tends to stain the color of your skin, so of the resin skin. And I've definitely noticed that as well when I use like a dark brown on my eyes and just kind of do all the outlining and stenciling with that. Sometimes it does leave, for the areas I've wiped away, kind of a reddish cast to it, and so I think people use that orange as a guideline because if they need to wipe things away, it will leave more of a nice like shading color, like more shading onto that eye, instead of, you know, anything else. So again, that's not a method that I use when I'm painting eyes. I kind of just draw the outline and then like in the darker color, and that's all that I do. Mostly because I use so many layers of paint anyway that I really want to try to avoid like adding more layers. Yeah, exactly. It's closer to the skin tone, I would, venture a guess. I have seen, people do it, and yeah, it's generally closer to the skin tone. You're gonna get that a lot when you're working with reds or darker, colors, darker browns. Those will all tend to stain your kit. We might see it with this particular kit. I've actually never painted eyelashes this color, so that will be fun. But I'm not sure what effect that will have. And again, a lot of this will depend on how thick your top coat was, your gloss top coat. Because if you put on a super thick gloss top coat, you're probably not going to have as much staining because you have a bit more leeway in wiping things off. So the closer you get to hitting that resin, the more likely it will be to stain. So I generally try to lay on a super thick coat of gloss onto the faces before I even start. And then after that, there's a little bit more leeway as you're progressing through the kit. Okay. Still not entirely sure what I want to do with these eyes that are indented in. You can see I'm applying this quite messily. I'm, generally paying attention to the eyelashes and, where these lines are. But this is by no means like a clean, eye. There we go. Yeah, definitely not clean. Needs a lot of cleanup, especially in between the eyelashes. But that will all happen. And this is kind of, again, like a localized problem with kits that have eyelashes and pieces that stand out. You're gonna have to apply a little bit more to those areas to really get all the paint coverage. And do also make a note to be mindful of looking again at this at all angles, especially with these eyes that stick out, because you want to make sure that you're hitting all of the area that is sticking out. Let me come in and do this one too and double check. So a lot of times I do add a little bit more paint than is necessary, mostly because then I'll have more to sand off, or more to like thin off and rub off, but then I can be sure that I've made the shape that I want. If you do it too thinly or not enough, then sometimes you need to go in and supplement the area with a little more paint. Okay, so what I was saying before, and then I finished the eyes on this, is I am going to try to paint the outline here. So I'm gonna take my thinner brush and I'm gonna kind of make a brown outline around this, around her eye. It's very specific to this eye because she has these, indented eyes, but they are not defined actually. Okay, I changed my mind. I'm gonna go in with this brush instead. So we're gonna do this outline. A lot of anime eyes will have an eye outline on top of the eyelashes and all of that, so very rarely do they not have an eye outline. And usually that's more of a stylistic choice in like the composition of the art as a whole. Almost every anime kit that I have seen or painted or whatever has an eye outline. And what I mean by that is like this will be a line that we will put on this kit to serve as the outside of her eye, and where we will paint the color inside. So this whole thing for this kit in particular is her eye. There are no whites in this eye, and so this is actually a different step. This is would be step 2 of what I usually do, because the first thing that I always do when I'm painting eyes is I paint in the area of the white, and then I go in with the eyelashes and stuff. But we don't have that here. Just the stylistic choice of this kit. The sculptor chose not to use, whites of her eyes and keep her more chibi style. So we eliminated that step of the whites of the eye, and we can just go in and paint the eyelashes. So you can see here, like all of this will be her eye. There will be no white here, you know. Oh, thank you, Mr. Frike. Oh no, yeah, 3 months already. Has it really been 3 months? February, March, April, May. Yeah, I guess it has. Oh boy. Well, thank you so much for your subscription and your continued support. That really does mean a lot coming from a small artist. But yeah, you can see that there's no whites here in her eye, and she looks kind of scary now, and she'll continue to look scary up until we've like finished this kit. But yeah, this is more of a chibi style eye, I would say. I paint a lot of eyes, and occasionally they come like this, where you have no whites. What you could do, and I think that kind of goes into what you're suggesting, Fries, is you can alter things to some extent. So what I could do is kind of paint outside of this outline, and you know, give her whites of her eyes here, or add an eyelash here. In terms of like tinkering with the eye itself, I don't generally like adjust the size of the eye socket by sanding or anything like that. A lot of times I just, you know, use what I got and then manipulate that to the best of my ability. And so for a commission I'm working on, for example, the face plate, or the face itself, has relatively small and rounded eye sockets, which are not representative of the eye style of this particular character. And so what I had to do is use that space, use the eye socket space, and then both work with that faceplate style and the design of the eye itself, and kind of meet a middle ground. And so when the client looks at the kit, you know, they will want it to look like the character, right? But if the sculptor didn't even make it that way, that can be kind of tough. And so a lot of what I do is painting eyelashes and kind of, yeah, messing with the proportions to make it look closer to what a character should look like. Yeah, so that's generally something, if you have eyes that are too small, especially if they're sockets, that can be tough, because if you can paint outside of that space, but you might be dealing with like seeing it, right? Because if you've got paint that's hitting the outside edges here, and yet your face space is in here, it can be a little bit tough to like make that look nice. But gloss helps. Like glossing a surface a bunch helps, because the more you like gloss and apply your paint, your surface will get smoother and smoother. So again, like glossing something is basically adding a protective layer, and so the more layers you add, the smoother that surface is gonna get. So there's a fine line to it. You can't let it get too crazy. So you don't want to gloss it too much, because then you're starting to like almost change the color that's underneath. Things will start to look kind of different the more you gloss the layers. But there are certain tricks you can get away with. Oh, and yeah, it'll be nice. I need to upload more photos of her. I'm pretty far along, but I haven't really had a chance to, so we'll get around to it. Usually with the client photos, I try to keep everything pretty private until it's in their possession, because, you know, you want to make sure they're satisfied and they're the ones seeing it first. So, all right, I think I'm gonna hold off for now on giving her her outline, just because I'm not quite sure what I want to do with this yet. And I don't know what did this sculptor do with this one. Let me make this photo bigger real quick. I think she did add a huge outline. Yeah, so you can kind of see she painted these eyes in black, and or like a dark brown, maybe. Probably the same color as what the apron and stuff is. But there's a pretty thick black outline here. What she might have done actually is just paint the entire eye in that color, and so not only paint the eyelashes, but paint all of the eye black, and then went in with like a glossy color, or like a metallic color, and painted that inside. And so she's basically working on a black base. Like that might have been what the sculptor did, because when I looked at this photo, I noticed there was kind of a black outline along the kind of indent here. So you can see that she has these circle indents. On this side, I did notice that that sculptor had black, and then the middle is white, so I think she added the white there. So that's interesting. I'll have to consider, you know, that when I'm working on this, but I'm not sure yet what I want to do. If I just want to give her an outline and deal with that surface inside later or what. So to be continued for that. And this one, we're pretty much good for this. Just gonna let this sit for a little bit. On Wednesday, we are going to continue cleaning this up because right now she is pretty horrifying. It'll be even more horrifying later, like I said. But this is very rough. This needs to be cleaned up, but we can do that. But what I did want to do before we wrap up is kind of touch up her shoes. So again, these shoes did have a couple of areas that were kind of off, and because we masked and it's such a different I don't want to hear this, and also I'm pretty sure this is not DMCA free. Okay, so I think yeah, what we did is we masked all of this, but it wasn't totally clean just because it's such a small and difficult area to mask. So I'm gonna go in and thin this purple again and try to clean up those lines a little bit. And that way on Wednesday we'll be able to completely work on fixing up these shoes and the eyes. And from then on, it'll pretty much all be eyes after that. Again, not sure how many layers I want to do, but we'll figure it out. Excuse me. I have not drank very much today. I'm gonna take a quick drink. Oh, if you guys do want to see what this looks like in comparison though, you can see that flipping these together, it will zoom in, really makes it look nice and clean. So it's very much starting to look more like a Maid at this point. Note there is a color difference between the top here and the bottom here because we did apply this kind of red metallic, so I still need to do a thin layer of that on top, and hopefully that will blend it all in together. I also did notice that I was like talking about filling in this button and making it a color, but the artist did not do that in her official one, so I think we're still going to go ahead and I'll probably make that a gold button, but to be determined. We can add that later. There's no pressure. Alright, gonna clean off this brush just a tiny bit because it had some of that brown on it. And then we're gonna go in and clean up the line here. This is a little easier to fix than the top of that apron because we already did a majority of the work. So that apron had no purplish block on it at all before, and here we're just going in and fixing lines. So you can see, let's see. Oh, that is a zoom up, but it's hard to notice. Hard to tell. Maybe if I cover all of this. Nope, that doesn't help. Anyway, yeah, so what I'm trying to get at here is that we already painted all of the, you know, red onto this, and so the amount of cleanup that we have to do is a lot less than just painting it, you know, from scratch. And so that's something you can also do is if you are, you know, painting with a lot of lacquers, is try to get as much of that done as possible. And then you will have less to do when you're trying to clean up everything with enamel. I've been doing that a lot more lately. It's only really smaller kits like this or chibi kits that have issues, you know, with location. It's difficult to mask or whatever, that then I go in and hand paint that. But I've been trying to cut down my hand painting a lot lately and just reserving the time for fixing details that I missed with the lacquer. But you can do a lot by taking the time to hand brush and fixing up details. You'll, your work will definitely be noticed in your final product. whether you're using acrylics in the end or enamels or whatever, the detailed stuff on a kit is always noticed. At least by people who are really taking the time to look at your photos close up. I think the majority of people here just want to see, you know, cute finished photos, but there's definitely select groups of people that want to zoom in and see every detail. And so taking the time to make sure that all looks nice, well, me, it gives me more peace of mind that I've delivered a good product. Okay, this piece is very glossed at this point, so it really like is shifting around because it's so slippery. So I'm trying to get up into these straps as much as I can, but it keeps sliding. Okay. This is where using the gloves comes in handy because, boy, there's a lot of handling when it comes to details. Okay, I'm not going to press myself too much for in between these shoes, just because it's such a hard area to reach anyway. There's a couple ways you can angle it and move your paintbrush. There we go. Whoa, there she goes, slippery. I do actually drop my pieces quite often. Always give me a baby heart attack whenever I do it to a client's commission, but my own stuff is like I drop it all the time. Also kind of why I switched to lacquer, because it's a lot more forgiving if you drop stuff, technically like a lot stronger. When I use Tamiya acrylics, oh man, like I drop stuff all the time. I dealt with so many chips. It just became like a point where I was doing too much damage to my own stuff, and so switching to lacquer actually helped me a lot. Oh, do I have another spammer? Thank you, Curry. I didn't know if you were still here watching. I just saw that. Okay, this is getting real tough here, so I'm gonna kind of paint the underside here a little bit, but again, this is one of those things where you're not going to see it, so I'm not as concerned about getting a perfectly straight line, but I do want to fix up any problems. Okay, that's pretty much good. Let me wipe this down, and then there's a couple areas that I wanted to clean up with my sponge. Then after that, I think we're good. Let me grab my sponge. I don't know what that is. Oh, also, what I'm gonna do real quick before I forget, is there's a tiny dent that formed, like I think when I was doing the masking tape, I bumped it with my tweezers, and so there's a little dent on the back of her leg here, and you might be able to see it. Oh, it's just so bright. How did this happen? It was not this bright before. Anyway, tiny dent is like right here, and so what I'm gonna do is fill that in with some white and see how it looks. So I'm using just kind of a random thing of enamel I have here. I was using this yellow on a client's commission, same client, but I'm gonna double dip here and use the same palette. I'm mostly done with this yellow. And I don't need a lot, I need really, really tiny amounts, so that might have been too much thinner though. White is like honestly a little bit weird to thin, because once you hit past the point of it being thin too much, it's just so runny. Okay, mostly what I'm doing here is just trying to fill in that spot. You're not going to remove the dent, but the color is a little different, so by filling it in we can help remove that blemish, or at least help it fade out a little bit. it'll change it from like a darker color to more of a softer gray, and that's honestly for our purposes fine, but I very much try to avoid any of that when I'm working on clients' commissions, and a lot of times if I end up bumping or scratching stuff, there's only so much you can do, and then you just gotta scrap the piece and start over. And that's more me being a perfectionist about it. Like, really honestly, clients are not gonna notice tiny defects, but on the off chance that they do, like, you know, I have it covered. So I think, oh wait, there's a little bit more purple here I need to apply. Oh, and I need to make sure that that's all wiped off. Don't like to mix color too much with this paintbrush because I try to only use it for applying. I don't want to be crazy with it like my other paintbrushes. There we go. Okay, let's double check the sides and the other side. Again, a little more forgiving. We'll clean it up later, but if it extends a little bit past on to this white bloomers, I don't have an issue with that. Or her stockings, my bad. Okay, so this is pretty much the cleaned up, not cleaned up, but put down version of her her shoes. Sorry, getting late. So you can kind of see that some of the lines are maybe a little bit rough. Let's see if I can not have this blow out. Yeah, the color is a little bit different here. Really tough. There we go. But the goal here will be to make the shoes as smooth as possible because we really want that nice curved shape. We don't want it jagged. We want her shoes, especially because they're more like Mary Jane's, you know, with some straps. We want them to just have a nice smooth shape. And that's really what I go for a lot, is like smooth, smooth shapes. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it at this point. So we've got this, you know, piece pretty much done. And on Wednesday, so Wednesday the 26th, we will continue on with painting these eyes. We're going to do a lot of the cleanup here. I'm probably just going to go straight into the cleanup with these eyes, honestly, and get that shape of the eye really locked down. And then after that, I will continue to at least paint the base color on that. So I'll decide on an eye color and get the main eye color shape down, or the color of the inside. And then after that, we can decide kind of the eye style and stuff. But any longer than that, and it takes too long. So I'm gonna have to work here and there and do a step here and there. Also at that time we can work on shoes, but these are kind of lower priority than eyes because the eyes take longest. So yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you for tuning in to my stream, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day / night. Yeah, stay cool. It's getting really hot. Well, thankfully today it was not too hot, but it's supposed to be hot now that it's getting summer. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Have a good night, you guys. Talk to you on Wednesday. Bye bye.